My full name is Mukovhe Morris Masutha. I'm a volunteer and founder of Thusanani Foundation. The purpose of today is the beginning of our township high school learner support programs, which is aimed at bridging the educational information and technology gap between township youth and their privileged counterparts in order to create an equal opportunity for all to access and succeed in institutions of higher learning. But primarily, we are also helping townships, about 1,000 township schools learners, to accurately apply into institutions of higher learning, in particular VETs and UJ, as well as helping them to apply for higher education funding opportunities, in particular the National Students Financial Aid Scheme. So because a lot of students fail to gain admission, and a lot of them also fail to access higher education funding because they struggle to complete the forms accurately, and also fail to support the correct supporting documentation. So we decided to take all of them and bring them here into the university and do everything inside the university. By so doing, taking the university to communities by way of taking communities to the actual university, because there's an increasing gap that's currently taking place where universities are becoming more and more elite institutions, and those who seek to access them are getting further and further away from them because of the growing information and technology gap, particularly for rural and township youth. So Thusanani is trying its level best to become a bridge between higher education opportunities and their intended beneficiaries, in particular those who need them the most. So today we assembled township schools to be able to achieve that mission of bridging the gap and enabling all to access and succeed in institutions of higher learning. So the bulk of the work is done by our volunteers, who themselves are actually beneficiaries of Thusanani Foundation and are currently studying at the university. So they are able to just turn around and show a learner who is in grade 12, I'm at VETS now, this is what I'm studying, this is how I got here, this is how I completed the application form accurately, these are the supporting documentations which were needed, these are the subject requirements, these are the points required, and should you do that right, we move on to the financial aid form. This is what the financial aid form is, this is what it requires, these are the supporting documentation that must accompany a successful financial aid application form. And that way, our beneficiaries are already becoming volunteers themselves by the time they are inside the university, which is basically a strategy that is inherently built into our model. The only way we can become sustainable is if those who benefit from our actions become the ambassadors of what we do and actually turn around and do the same thing, and that way to just be a very progressive cycle of volunteerism. We believe that higher education for a very long time has been a very strong contributor to the reproduction and maintenance of social inequality. But at the same time, we also believe that higher education can be utilized to reverse social inequality. And by enabling rural and township youth to access post-schooling opportunities, both universities and TVET colleges, we open up a number of opportunities through which they can use to break the cycle of poverty in communities. And we also believe that the bulk of solutions or the bulk of the problems that are facing our country can be solved by opening the doors of learning to the majority of our people, particularly those who have been prohibited either financially or by race to access post-schooling opportunity. And we're trying to disrupt the current commodification of higher education, which leaves the bulk of our population in the periphery. And we are now doing that by physically taking the university to communities or bringing communities to the actual universities. So these learners are here at the Great Hall at Wits University. This is the hall that you can only really access when you graduate, but we are bringing them here in advance before they even register, so that they get the feeling and they can realize that it's nothing extraordinary. If they work 10 times harder, get the marks, we will work on securing higher education funding opportunities for them, and then before they know it, they'll be inside. So we want to practicalize it. We don't do career exhibition per se. We focus on the technical details, the common mistakes that students commit when they are applying to post-schooling opportunities, and avoid all of that, and then work on their drive to succeed. And then I think we should be able to get where we want to get to. Our initiative is aimed at helping secure and safeguard the future of South Africa. But for us to achieve that, we must start in high school and make sure that those students or learners remain at school until they complete grade 12. By so doing, fighting the dropout rate in high school, 1. 2, we're helping these very same learners to access post-schooling opportunities so that they become employable, but also skilled enough to pursue entrepreneurial opportunities themselves. So those who become employable will contribute toward the skills deficit of our country. Those who become entrepreneurs will become future job creators. We are not creating job seekers. So because as a result, in fact, the reason why we have such a high unemployment rate is because there are more job seekers than job creators. So we are skilling future job creators. But any successful entrepreneur needs some form of background and form of skill set in that particular field or sector of the economy. But also, this initiative is aimed at safeguarding South Africa's future socio-political stability, in the sense that young people, when the bulk of your population is young, that can be a blessing. It can also be a curse. It can be a blessing in the sense that a younger population it increases your levels of productivity, growth, and therefore development. A good social capital or human capital will help us to address our energy problems, our water problem, our food problems, food insecurity, energy insecurity, water insecurity. So in a sense, if we don't plan for future energy insecurity, future food insecurity, future water insecurity today, then we'll be in trouble, we'll be unstable. But if we skill our future water engineers, energy engineers, sanitation specialists, and so on, we are pretty much safeguarding the socio-economic stability of our country in future. Now, when the bulk of your young people are both unskilled and economically inactive, both today and in future, they become a direct threat, much bigger threat than any military confrontation, if you like. So, in as far as we're concerned, we are volunteers of Thusanani Foundation who were educated and taken to university by government for free. And we therefore feel morally obligated to this government and this country, all the taxpayers of South Africa who paid for our fees. We have to make sure that whatever they contributed to was not our individual brilliance or individual success, but we have decided to become volunteers who will safeguard the future of the country. And it's at a small scale at the moment, but the more we grow our volunteer base, the more we'll be able to expand and maximize the impact of our work. And that's how I think we will contribute towards the future of the country and the continent in particular. The National Development Plan is informed by a public-private partnership, but that partnership is incomplete without civil society movements that are grassroots in their nature, community-based organizations. So business or the private sector in general needs to support Thusanani Foundation and its work, because Thusanani is trying to safeguard and stabilize the future of South Africa. And for their business to thrive, South Africa must be stable. So, secondly, we are skilling their future employees, we are skilling their future business partners, we are skilling their future innovators and future entrepreneurs who will create an environment conducive for both the public and the private sector to grow and thrive. If we continue today like all is well, then both the public and the private sector run the risk of confronting high levels of socio-economic instability in future, because the majority of our population will be both unskilled and economically inactive. That's why I believe it will be very important for both government and private sector to fund this kind of volunteer movement, because in a sense, these are, or we are Thusanani volunteers who have been educated by both government and the private sector, as a matter of fact. I was educated from undergraduate all the way to postgraduate by the Limpopo provincial government and the National Students Financial Aid Scheme for free. As a result, myself and a lot of the volunteers you see working with Thusanani Foundation feel morally obligated to do what we are doing so that we are able to safeguard the future of our country and our continent in particular. It's very, very important. And that also corporate South Africa must do away with these CSI trends of mixing community work with advertising or marketing. We are not interested in any form of marketing. We are a community-based movement that is trying to address social ills. And I believe people must not confuse community development with marketing. Those things must be separate. They can be mutually complement. They can complement each other, sure. But the extent to which you can support a community-based project or organization must not be informed by how much marketing capital you can get out of it. And so business must really be cautious about this thing. And I think we are trying to build a social and volunteer movement of young people across South Africa who genuinely believes in the cause, who genuinely believe in the model of Thusanani Foundation, but most importantly, feel morally obligated to do what we are doing. We don't force anybody. We're a voluntary organization. But I'm quite happy that by now we've got over 1,200 volunteers across 20 different universities. We've enrolled about 451 students in universities, something which we wouldn't have been able to achieve if we did not remain true to being a community-based organization as opposed to a marketing vehicle for a corporate or government for that matter. So yes, it's very important that we partner across sectors, but we must, the partnership must be genuine and informed by a common objective. Otherwise, we are going to continue to march on, and our work is not dependent on, it's not dependent, it doesn't have any other motive but to achieve our cause or our objective. And that we will continue to do regardless of who is supporting us. The model of Thusanani Foundation in trying to help keep the youth at school so they don't drop out, improve the quality of their pass rate so they meet entrance requirements into higher education opportunities, in helping them to apply for higher education funding opportunities, is incomplete, or our impact is very limited without the involvement of parents. In fact, parents play an integral role in our ability to succeed as a foundation and to succeed in maximizing the impact of our work. I'll give you an example. Every student we are helping to apply for the National Students Financial Aid Scheme will need to declare the income level of their parents. They can do so by providing a certified copy of the salary advice or payslip of the parents, or the parent must go to the police station and declare in an affidavit that he or she is unemployed. Failure of the parents to cooperate in those areas means that that student cannot access the National Students Financial Aid Scheme, because the National Students Financial Aid Scheme is determined by your level, your ability to qualify for it is determined by your household income. And we can only validate that. Institutions can only validate that if the parents are willing to part ways with those documents. Now, you get some parents who think that when a student asks for the pay slip, they're trying to get them into debt, or I don't know, do some debit order from somewhere, something like that. It's inaccurate. So as Thusanani, we're still actually working around how we can get parents to trust in the model, and maybe get them to submit those documents to their principals, and then we get those documents without them having given them to their children. But essentially, you can see that parents play a critical role. Without parents, the model's impact, so Thusanani Foundation's impact, is very limited, if not impossible altogether. Because every bursary funder, sponsor, or financial aid office is looking to determine the household income of a student before they allocate a bursary to that particular land. So we need parents to come on board, but also it is a bad habit to outsource learning or to outsource your children to the schooling system altogether. It's not right, because a lot of what happens at school needs to be reinforced at home. A lot of discipline that a student must display at school must come from home. If parents do not get involved in any way, and you can look at the most successful countries in improving the quality of the pass rate, there's a high degree of parent involvement in the teaching and learning process. And that way, I think we can be able to diagnose some of the challenges facing basic education. So parents need, it's very important, they have to participate. They have to participate in every stage of our intervention. Of course, from early childhood all the way to university. We can take over maybe from varsity, but they must play an integral role at least throughout. We need maybe up until their pay slip, which we need to apply for a bursary. After that, then we will inform them of progress. But they must play an integral role. And I think if you look at some of the most successful students, there's a very high involvement of their parents in their day-to-day lives as a student and just as an individual. So we can't outsource. Teachers are themselves parents, right? So it's the parent outsourcing a child to another parent with the hope that the qualification that the other parent has will help in. It's not complete. I think we must all be together. That way we can have maximize the impact of both parents at least. The first thing that our learners must do is to appreciate having had an opportunity to come to a university like Wits and receive career guidance and facilitation of admission into the institution, because there are thousands and thousands of young South Africans who would appreciate this opportunity, one. Two, they must know that for them to even consider being able to access higher education institutions, somebody had to die. So they must understand it within that context, that this is an opportunity that lots of freedom fighters died for us to get where we are today. Two, there's an episode where somebody's mother passed away in a queue trying to register their child at the University of Johannesburg in 2011. They must interpret the seriousness of what we're doing within that context, that there are others who are willing to give up their lives just to get their children inside the university. So they must take this very serious, and they must go back home and say, if somebody's mother could die trying to register their child inside the university, I have to add at least 3 more hours of studying so that I improve the quality of my pass rate and I'm able to access that particular university one. Secondly, they must know that as Thusanani Foundation, all our volunteers do what they do because they feel morally obligated to South Africans in general. We don't expect anything from them in return. However, we hope and pray that they respect this opportunity and grow up to become volunteers themselves and go back to their communities and roll out the same efforts in trying to bridge the educational information gap in order to create an opportunity for all to access institutions of higher learning. If their failure to become volunteers, or should they decide not to become volunteers in future, we won't hold it against them, but it will be a clear indication of a significant flaw in our model. We don't sign any contract. We sign moral contracts and social contracts with our beneficiaries and our volunteers because we don't think you can teach someone to be a volunteer, but you can positively indoctrinate and induct somebody to understand their role as a South African. You don't have to sign anything. I mean, the legal things, people are going to comply just because it's legal. So we are not trying to grow technocrats who can subscribe to, what they have signed and stuff. None of it is compulsory. It's a voluntary movement. We are not selective wherever you're from. 90% of our beneficiaries are from rural areas, but today we decided to work with the 20 Gauteng township schools. That's because of the geographic, economic, social, and financial dependence or interdependence between our townships and the rural areas. So those who are in townships, if you look at the financial flows, lots of money moves between the township and the rural areas because these individuals or these families are very dependent on each other. So if you empower the township, you empower the rural area. And if you empower the rural area, of course you empower the township, because these individuals or communities are very dependent on each other. So yeah, I don't think from what we shared with them today, I cannot think of a more sophisticated way to conscientize them into understanding the role they can play.